The background of this painting is created by mixing a white base with a light blue, a smidgen of red, and you can even add a smidgen of black in there if you want it to be a little bit darker. You use those same colors for your shadows that are behind the buoy, but it's just darker and you don't put as much white in. And as you begin to figure out where your shadows are cast, you can see using the toe of your brush, you can just put the edge in. Do the same thing for both buoys. So all that space is filled in. Now the first buoy over there on the left-hand side, you can see the string comes up on that left-hand side right here. This one that's on the right-hand side is also the string that comes back in, and it has just one little shadow that's about the same size as the rope. So you can see I just divided that space and have a little cast shadow right there in that spot. But the more I play with the paint and the colors, the more scuffing I can get. So if I take a little red, I can scuff across it. If I take a little more blue, I can scuff, or even white. And that is like a dry brush approach. I don't have much paint on my brush. I just put it on there, and literally when I put it on and get it in all the way through my brush, I drag most of it off so I can flatten my brush out like this. And after I flatten it out, then I can just scrub it along in my painting. So I can even come back in here if I want some places that really look scuffed up, and I can just make some marks. And once again, you can make those with any of the colors we've used. We could pick up a little bit more red if you wanted to play up that color a little bit. Look how fun it is to take the red and lay it down and just scuff it right across that dark gray color. Just lay it in there so that you can see it. Some places you might want to scuff and have a little bit more of the blue. It's a light blue color, so look how nice it just lays right across that dark gray. I'm using a real loose brush stroke, so nothing's tight. I'm just swooping the colors across, but because my brush is dry, it does make a look of it being scuffed right across the top of it. The blue is real pretty right here, like right up against the buoy. I just laid it and let it go right against the edge. So white, red, pinkish, purplish, bluish, any of those colors can be just real fun to play in with. So the background actually starts just with a base of white, with blue, and with red. Makes a purpley kind of color, and then you get to just play and mix and put the color in there so that all your background space is painted. The first time you paint, usually you call it the underpainting until you start building up things on it. So if you are more of a pinky person or red, you can certainly scuff that in as much as you want to. If you like the aqua color, if the green becomes more important to you, you can scuff in some green. That gets just really pretty by scuffing that color in. And of course, if you feel like you need it lighter in that top corner where the light's coming in, you can certainly add more white in that corner. And it depends on how rugged you want it to look too. The more you scuff, the more rugged or antique it looks. So if you like that, you can just keep scuffing. Just keep scuffing. It's a very loose painting, but it's fun to get in the colors that you like where you want them. As long as you go a little lighter up here where the light's coming in so it can cast the shadow over here, everything else will work itself out. Thing that's fun to do with this sponge, you can use it wet-ish and dry-ish in a couple of different ways. But while it's dry first, you can try this. You can just dip your sponge into the palette, the same colors that you're actually using, and you can just daub it on right on top of all the scuffing that you were doing, and you can get marks that look dotty because this is one of those organic sponges that have a lot of spaces missing out, and of course it allows you to get a spot. And so you can dip just as much color as you want to with that, just to spice up the texture a little bit. Then you can scrub with it like this, where you're almost just washing it. So you can wash some of the colors around. And then you can see a little bit how it looks when you add a little water to it. You can just put, say, a corner in the water and then squeegee it so the water is all in the sponge. And that way you could actually move some of the colors around if you wanted to. So if you needed a little bit more blue and you wanted it over here, or a little bit more green, it does allow you to be a little bit looser and antique-like if that's what you're striving for. But it's just a personal preference. If you want to go that far in the distressing of it, you can certainly do that.
So the first step was just to rub the sponge on what you already have?
Yeah, if it's dry and you just put it in the colors that are wet on your palette,
okay,
then you can just dab it like this and make a couple of spotty kind of places that look rough or old or antique. But after you play with it a minute, if you decide you want to do a little bit more roughing in with the water, you can just dip it in the water and just sort of squeegee it. So you don't want to carry much water unless you like a drippy look. And if you like a drippy look, you can certainly get that, but it will run.
okay.
And if you don't want it to run, just make sure that you get most of the water out by squeegeeing it out, and then you can also dab it on your paper towels. But it's just a fun way to sort of play in here to get a real interesting background. And of course you don't have to. If you're really happy with your background and you don't think that it needs anything, you certainly don't have to add any more to it. As you use your sponge and your brush, see, now you can go back and scrub a little bit. So you can just really carry the background to a whole new level. With those tools, the brush and the sponge. So then our journey will be going into just really the local colors that you have in the buoy. So we'll talk about those next. But to carry this picture through, what we want to be able to do first is to figure out what your local colors are going to be. So of course I'm going to use the ones that are in the inspiration picture because that's the one that you chose to come paint. But I do want you to feel free to change them if you want to. I'm taking my round brush now. It has a point on it. I put it in the water just to get enough of the paint on the brush so it slides around a little bit, but not too wet because I want to keep, this will be once again my background color or my underpainting. I'm going to go with white first, and I'm going to paint the top of this buoy white. Now look how clean and white that looks against that background. See, dramatically it changes just by putting in the white. Now the white that we use is the buoy's local color, But after we get that in there, we are going to round it out to make it look like it's round as a form instead of just a flat shape. But I just want us to get the local colors in first, and then we'll talk about how we're going to round everything out. Because in this case, since it's one long form, it'll be pretty simple. But this is the round brush. I just picked up the white paint, and I'm filling in, and overpaint your lines just a little bit so that your edges are painted. If you don't like the lines showing, the lines actually are going to become a part of the painting when we paint those in again. So you don't necessarily have to cover them up by the edge, but if you want to, you certainly can. But I'm using the round brush. It's a larger one, so you can it holds a lot of paint, and it's real easy for you to go and actually just use the round part of the brush to go in like this, and use the toe of the brush to go in and literally edge in the whole shape. Now remember, when you're painting, it's easier, especially if you're right-handed, to paint this way, but it feels awkward if you're painting this way. So please feel free to just turn your canvas upside down and go into it like this. This makes it so much easier if you're right-handed to go into your lines on the inside part instead of on the outside. So I just flipped my canvas over, and I painted everywhere where I wanted it to be white, and then I have that completed. And this is going to be, a real elementary process to begin with. We're basically just using the colors to fill in the spaces with. So as soon as you get your white done, I want you to pick up the red that you have. You can make it red-ish or orange-ish if that's what you choose to do. If you use the color right out of the tube, it's this dark. If you add yellow into it, it becomes a little more on the orange side. So you can just decide what you like. In a minute, we're going to lighten up one side and darken another side. So you can make that decision, but make sure that you get the white off your brush if you don't want it to turn pink. Because anytime you add white to anything, of course, it changes the color. And if you don't want pink, then make sure you wash out and then you can add on the left hand side where the light's coming in. You can add more yellow. You can even add a little white to the yellow. And this side is going to be glossed with just yellow so it gets lighter. Let's see how the light hits over there. Got a lot of shadows to put in. Right now we're just sort of putting in some basic color. The same thing's going to happen below it when we start putting the handle in. We know it's red, but we know it's got a lot of shadow because of the position it has. So with the toe of the brush, I'm just taking the red, I'm going in, literally just painting in like the left-hand side of it, and then I'll paint the right-hand side. But I do want you to notice the difference in the shading. So on the one that I'm doing now on the left-hand side, I'm going to continue to add yellow to that so that it's lighter or it has more orange in it. And I'm going to let the other side be darker and have more red in it. Now the shadow's going to take over, and all of that will look very different in a minute. But just get that underpainting under there, get that local color. And remember, it's real easy to flip the canvas around so that you can use that wrist action to get your brush to go where you want it to go. Now, of course, that handle has two parts, sort of the front and the back, or or left and the right, whichever way you want to think about it, but it does have the shadow that we'll be putting in a minute. So it's pretty easy to add that light color, that yellow, going through this side just by stroking the yellow right across the red. It really turns orangey looking. We'll get the other side darker in a minute with some blues and some purples. So as soon as we fill in our red space, we'll move to that beautiful blue color. We've got a light blue and we also have turquoise. So this is the aqua. We've got another blue, but you can put both of those together. You can use one or the other. The one that you actually see pictured in your inspiration piece is this one, the light blue color that's already mixed in the tube for you. So I'm just using the little round part of the brush and going in and making that shape. If you're not sure about the shape, look and make sure you've got two lines that are parallel to each other, but they're both on a diagonal. So we've got this line and this line. That's the most important thing when you're doing something that's a cube like that or a square, that you get that put in. And the one on that left-hand side is lighter, so I just used it right out of the tube. We'll make it darker on the other side. We'll put some black and red and some green or some other colors in there in a minute. But just setting up the basic shape for you so you'll know what we're painting. And get those pure, clean colors in there that we can use, and then we'll shadow everything up. But we'll still have the light hitting where it needs to. So now the shape down at the bottom is like a box that's tilted on its side, of course. So we need to go ahead and put that in by adding the black to it. So we'll do that first so you can see the difference. If I put a smidgen of black right in to the corner of the toe of my brush, I can go right in, and that shape you can see at the bottom is the darkest one. So I still had the blue on my brush, but I just went in and made the little tiny underneath part darker. So it's like a square, but it's turned on its side. Remember, we're just mapping out some color. Now, while you have the little bit of black and blue on your brush, you can go in on this side. This is the right side of the blue that you just painted, and you can put a little bit of that color in here. So now we've got a darker blue. And you can just put it right on the blue. So now you have a light on the left side, a medium on the right side, and then you have the darker right up underneath it, and that sets up staging for light that it needs. So with the blue that you have in here, remember, this is blue fresh out of the tube and it's lighter. And then we've got the medium blue here. We have the blacker blue there. The same thing's gonna happen up above. So just while you're listening and painting on some of the other spaces, that's fine. But we're gonna use the blue here, and that's gonna be the light one right out of the tube. So it's bright, it doesn't have any other colors mixed in it right now. We're just putting the local color in, and of course if you chose another color, that's fine. But the width of this brush is just about the same width that you can get with this line that we have drawn for the stripe. So you can make the stripe blue, and then of course we're gonna get all the highlights and shadows in. This will be the base color. Just round it out with your brush. Remember, you can turn it upside down and sideways to make sure you get it rounded like you want with the line. And then we just repeat it for the blue that's up underneath it. So we're just going in. This one's under the buoy. And of course, where the shadow is on this left-hand side, it's going to be very dark. And then on the right-hand side, it's going to be lighter. But right now, we're just filling in the space. All of the space up underneath here is going to go dark. So I put the black on the blue and let it make and cover that whole side. Now the blue's wet, so you see it's mixing, so that's what we want. It sometimes, if our paint blends, that's good. Sometimes we want it dry so we can scuff on top of it. Now we just want it a little bit blended so that we can still see it's blue, but of course it's in shadow, so it's darker. The same thing happens as it comes on over to the middle. You can see how it gets a little bit lighter and lighter. So if you have the blue wet and the black on your brush and you carry it across, it'll be darker here and then it'll get bluer as you move across because the black begins to disappear. And that way we can make sure that we have it a little bit lighter over here on that right-hand corner. So this area stays lighter, but look at the corner where it gets no light. We're actually gonna dip your brush in water and just roll it in the black paint. And you're gonna make another corner just like you made down here on the bottom, but this is gonna have a V shape and it'll actually be like a line. So in that little space, you'll paint that corner in pretty dark. So if you just dip it in the water, roll it around a minute in that black paint, you can get a nice little triangular corner in that space that really looks dark. And that'll begin to round out the buoy. So both corners are really dark, but it does get lighter and stay blue in this central area. And remember, we'll do more scuffing and we'll actually make it a little darker in a minute. We'll mix some red in with it. So to get ready for that, what we'll actually do is we'll take the black that we have, we'll add red into it now to get ready to come in this direction and make this darker. Remember, you've got a dividing line right down the middle, and we've got a darker red on this side. So as you mix on your palette, if you actually take the red and the black, this is the black that I was using a while ago to make this corner. I just picked up the black and put it right in the red, mixed it, and now I'm using that to come down and establish where that corner is, because this is definitely darker on this side and on that corner. So I'm just going to bring that down. Now it doesn't go all the way down and make a straight line. It does change over and get lighter this way. So you can just barely touch it when you get down here. But it's pretty solid up underneath in this point. So look at your inspiration picture and note that right up in this corner where the darkest part is, all the red is just about lost and the black takes over. But as it moves down, it does get lighter, but you can still see the corner. Anytime you need that line on your brush, just go back and dip it into the water. And if you'll dip the brush in the water and then you'll roll it in your paint like this, you can keep a point on the end of it. That's enough to give us an edge. Now remember, this is an object that's turning into a form. We want to make sure it looks round. So we're making the edge pretty even as we come down that middle space. Now, if we let that dry a minute, we can scuff and do all kind of fun stuff in there, but we are gonna let it dry so that we can go on and move to the other side. And basically, we're just doing the same thing, except we're not using as much of the black. It has more red in it, and it's the top section about an inch. And then we come down and it's darker. But as it moves on down, then it just fades out and you don't see any of the black anymore. So about the top inch is the black with the red mixed in. So once we lay out where everything's gonna go, then we can play with the colors and the values that we want to have changing around. And we want them to look used, of course, or worn out, so that's the fun part about this picture. Nothing has to look new. Okay, so a while ago we mentioned about the blue area here needing a darkness over here. So if you'll take the black and red that you have from here and bring it on down here on this right hand side, then you can see how easy it is for that to go darker and to turn grayish. But it's like a purpley gray because it's got so much of the red in it. So now that whole side begins to look like it is darker. Remember, if you have a hard time doing the line on each side, just turn that canvas upside down and it makes it a lot easier for you to form a line using the toe of your brush to make sure everything is even. So on the handle, at the bottom, we have very, very dark black and blue mixed together. I can take a little bit of this bluish gray color that I have here. I can go up underneath and put just a little bit of it so that that doesn't look completely black, but it's sort of a bluish gray color. So I just added a little bit of blue just to give it that local color back, even though the black just about took over. So if you layer it a few times, it begins to really show up the quality of it being painted. So on the side where you have this blue coming in, we want it to have some of the reddish color almost scuffed on it, like it were, you know, messed up or rubbed against something. So wash your brush and get it pretty clean so that we can start with red and then scuff it down into the blue. Now it's going to be sort of a combination of the colors that we've been using. I've got a little red, I have a little yellow, so it's orangey, and I'm going to add a little white to the orange. And I just want it to be a light orangey color, because remember the light that we have is coming in from this way. So remember when we started painting, we have orange here, we have a little orange there. So now we want just to use your brush so that you can sort of scuff it from this section where we started it a while ago. We're just going to let it scuff. And what happens if you do it while this blue is wet, we go down with the orange, and then what happens when we go up? We move the blue up with it. So now we've got a scuff, just like what really happens with the handle when it's hit on something. The paint moves, changes places, and now we've got a scuff mark. So we've got a little bit of the orange moving on the blue, and we have a little bit of the blue moving right up on the orange. Okay, so that's the yellow and the orange. We're gonna do that again. So do a little scuffing. If you'll pick up red and yellow, get the orangey color. You can add a little white to it once it gets orange. And wipe off your brush enough so you're not carrying a lot of paint, and we can do some scuffing here. We want to scuff just by taking and laying the side of the brush right into that space. And these lines can be directional. See how I'm going across it almost like at a diagonal? I'm just scuffing it. So the scuffing happens when you get a little bit of the wet paint hitting some of the dry paint, but it doesn't mix, it just sort of lays on top of it. We've got some other highlights that come in, but we're gonna do all those last. Right now we're just scuffing up some of the red and orangey color, so it's not new looking. Because we have to put the shadows that are around it first. So now I'm making a dark red color. I'm going to go in and get blue and red to make a dark purple. It's the same color that we were using over here a while ago, so we're just making a little bit more of that. And we're going to let our brush go in and work really hard for us so we can use this space, and we're going to use that brush to come in, and we're going to darken that space. So using the tip of your brush, you might have to dip it in water just a little bit. It's going to make the edge, but in addition to making the edge, it's going to put the shadow, and it's going to make it look and feel rounded. We're going to do that in the red, in the blue, and in the white. And you can see how I'm just laying it down gradually just so I can get a feel of the way it's going to look. I am going to move it out and go across. I'm not going to go halfway across. I'm going to go like a third of the way across. So this third is darker, and then this third is going to be darker, but it's going to stay light in the middle. But once again, it's just blue and red mixed together, so it makes sort of a dark purpley color. As you want to, you can add a little bit more blue into it. As I move up, if I want it to go bluer, I can just dip back into the blue a little bit more. But this whole edge going all the way up is going to get darker right along the edge. And if you'll see how I'm wiping off the brush now and just getting the paint off, that way when I go back and forth with my brush like that, I'm not covering up the white, but I'm just spreading out that blue and gray color just a little bit. I'm just spreading it so it covers. And it's okay if that orange blends and the yellow blends. We want it to look scuffed, so just let it scuff up. We can always fix it and add new white to it if we need to. But we want it to be darker on the ends. So blue and red. Go dark on the ends. Just take your brush. You can start right here in the corner if you want to. Just pull it up. Dip that brush in the water. Roll it in the paint. Get yourself a corner. Get yourself a line so that you can just ease all the way up. When you get to where the rope is, you can stop because we're going up underneath it. You can see the top part we're not going to work on right this minute. We're going right up underneath it. We're going up under that little shape and across. Pull this out so you can see we're going right up underneath. There's a white circle like a cat that's sitting right on the top, so don't worry about that. We're going around it and under it. We're coming all the way across, and then we'll go down the other side. But get comfortable with this. If you feel like that you have it too dark, then it's real easy to put some light back in it, so don't worry about that. Just get that corner really dark. And then I'll show you how we can scuff some white on top of it. I added white to my brush, and watch this. See how I can go back across? And I can make it turn grayer. But you've got to get it in there. Don't be afraid to put the gray in there, or the purple. Lay it in, and then we can stuff all the white back on it that you want. Okay, so the only way I can get the other side is to turn my canvas upside down, so I'm going to do that so I can get the other side. Just with me standing up the way I am on top of it, I can't reach over that way. So now I have blue and red. I dipped my brush in water. I'm going to go and start painting. Actually, up under here, I'm going to start at this corner and make it darker. I'm just using the toe of my brush, and I'm not making a definite line, but I'm just spreading out the paint. I just keep dipping and scrubbing and dipping and scrubbing. Sometimes I can pick up a little bit more blue. Sometimes I can pick up a little more red or purple. That's the fun about this. Just whatever your brush picks up, you can sort of think about it as an adventure in getting that color in. But dip and roll in the water and really make the colors soak in. Lay them right on top of that white paint. That's why we put it there. So lay it in, and then you'll be right back where you started from. And then we'll do some more scuffing. So once I lay in that dark edge, I'm going to keep building. I picked up a little bit of more red, and I'm going right along the edge. Turned a little bluish, so now I'm going a little purpley by putting a little more red in it. You can see how it looks darker for that corner. So just let it spread out a little bit. So there's a lot of work in washing your brush, drying your brush, patting it dry, picking up color after color, changing it just ever so slightly so you get those different colors in there. It's not just purple, it's red, it's blue, it's all the individual colors. Now, while my brush is clean, I'm putting a little bit of white back on it, and I'm scrubbing right over the top of the buoy so that I'm rounding out the shape, because it's got to look round. And so if you take that white, remember you're keeping it mostly white in the middle, so you're not going to put too much of a distress in that area. So I'm staying sort of on the outside of that space, and in here I'm just dragging the white across and letting it mix in some of the colors. White can be like a blender where you can just take and mix it, and the wet colors just pick up right onto it, and you can move them around. Okay, so now my edges really are beginning to look dark and round, and I can feel the form. So then we'll be able to do a little bit more playing in it, building some of the colors. Put a little bit more white on my brush here and move that around, just so I get that feel of it being gray and scuffed, not new, along the bottom. You can do that right up on the blue a little bit, just so the color begins to hide some of the purity of the other color that's in there. Just a little white scuff. Now I'm actually going to pick up some of that light blue, and watch what's going to happen in here. I really want that to look like the pen shape that it is. So to do that, I don't want this part to look like it's bent in and out. So watch what happens. I'm going to take the blue. This is the same blue that we've been using all through the picture, the light blue. And see how I'm going to scuff it in that area, in that shape? That makes sure that your eye gives the illusion that the pen is the same behind that form as it is on the outside of it. So that's why all this is distressed with this much blue up here, because if it's not, that curve that makes, because it is so dark, gives you the illusion that the shape is off, and it's not the shape, it's the overlapping. So if you take just a little bit more of the blue and scrub right over here on that right hand side, then it will become uniform, and that's what you're looking for. But the blue certainly adds some fun color to it.
And you got that by just putting a little bit of blue on your.
It's the light blue that we've been using right here. It wasn't like pure light blue, but if you
Okay.
want to use pure, you can, but it did have a little bit of, some color in it.
Okay.
Yep, and I just picked it up and just scuffed it. And if it gets too much when you scuff it the first time, let it sit there a minute, dry, and then you just scuff over it with some white, and it'll disappear. But the more layers that you scrape this, I mean, every move that I make, I'm just moving paint around in colors. So the more you scuff, the better you're gonna like your image. Okay, let's get that little top section detailed in a little bit. So we're going to look at what space where the rope comes in and out. Now notice you've got that little white cap on the top, but we've got the shadow over here, and then we've got the rope coming in. So the rope is a brownish color. So we're gonna make that with our 3 primary colors. So if you take, and I'll hold them like this so you can see, we've got blue and red and yellow. We'll mix those together in just about the same amount, equal amounts, and you will make a brownish color, depending on how equal you were in the mix. But if it's too green, add some red to it. If it's too red, add the blue to it. And then you'll have a brown. And of course, the brown we're going to use, we have to add white to it because it's not a dark brown.
I need a little more white.
I'm going to turn mine back like this so that you can see the spacing. So, just for mixing brown, I took the red and the blue and the yellow, and I came up with this dark brown, and then I added white to it, and now it's a light brown. So now I'm going to use that to make my rope at the top. We're not going to do much fancy work on it. Right now we're just going to think about, go from the top of the canvas down where you have that space, and first just make it a line, and then circle around the shape that you have, and we'll tie that little knot in later. Right now, just put enough of the brown in that you can actually see that that's where the rope is. So we're just sort of filling in the space. We're gonna leave it white, and then we're just gonna put the brown rope going around it. But leave the white right in the center. Now it comes out the other side right in front of where your shadow was. So take the brown and go in and paint the other rope going up right in front of the shadow line. Now you can lighten it up with orange or red if you want to. Any combinations of those colors is going to make you the rope color that you want. But we're going to paint both of these that are hanging up. So I added, you can see, a little bit of orange to this one and added white to it. and I'm just gonna come on down so that I can find my rope. I don't wanna lose it. So add white to the brown. If you add orange to it, it'll lighten it up too. But I wanna take it, the first one, as you can see, comes on the back inside of the buoy. So it's on the back side, so as soon as you get to the buoy, you stop, because it runs through the buoy and then out. So go to your circle, and inside that circle is where the rope starts again. So the same brown color you're gonna put in, and you're gonna go straight up, and that's gonna be your buoy line. That's gonna be your rope that's holding it up, and it's right on the other side of the shadow that you already have made. So after we get brownish here, the only reason I wanted it to go more brown in front of the purplish blue, shadow color is we wanted it to stand out. And so that's why I wanted to make sure it had a little bit more of the brown in it. But now, to make it really turn and look rope-ish, I thought it would be good if you take your color and add a little more white and yellow in it, so it will show up against the darker color. So we went lighter, we added white to it. Twice as much white and a dot of yellow. Now what I want you to do is I want you to actually build the rope by using this bright brush. So if you'll change over, it's a little bit easier. Some people like the round more, but try using the bright brush that's just a little smaller, because it's the exact same width that you need for it. And if you just lay it down, and on each one of those sections, if you'll pull the color through and almost make it like you're making a U, but not quite, you're barely touching the rope, but you're just laying down some paint. And you can see it's like a U shape, and it just pulls the color out enough so that you're beginning to think that it's color,
wound
and
up,
added more
curled
white
up
to
a
it,
little bit.
and just ran the
So
same
the light will
exact
show up on
place
the dark.
right over. But this time it's just a touch lighter. It's just a tint
It's
lighter.
simple.
It's
It's
almost
ever
like
so
a U.
slightly.
And you're barely touching the middle of all the way across
ropes that
on
you
all four
made a
lines
few
that you
minutes
set
ago.
up. Just a little bit lighter so you can see the rope. And it's all about things that are very near it or around it that gives it the depth that it needs. So to make this look like it is going in that buoy, what we're gonna do is put the black around the rope. So in this first one that's on this right-hand side, it's right in the center of that circle that you've drawn. So if you take that bright brush that's small, it's a number 2, it's square, and if you just draw around it so that the rope is coming right out of it, but you're doing that in the black because it's so dark in there you don't have any light coming in. But if you had rather use your circle brush, so that your round brush, so that you can form it that way, you certainly can. That's why I like different brushes, because you get to try them out and use them for different things. So now you've got the shadow set up, you've got the rope coming right out of the middle of it, so your buoy's hanging the way you want it to. Now we're going to continue coloring with local color so we can get all the canvas covered in, and then we'll do some more sculpting. So I'm going to go back to the big round brush again so I can get some space covered. And of course I have yellows and blues and greens. So I'm going to start with yellow first. I'm just going to get it right out of my cup, because all I'm doing for the first underpainting is just covering it with yellow. So I'm going to go in, I'm just using the toe of my brush to go in and get the edge. And then after I get my edge, then I just bring the paint over to the middle. And once I get that done on the top, I'll do the same thing on the bottom. But remember, I have to turn mine around so that I can get my other side edged in. So I'm coming with the yellow. Just using the round part of the brush to lay it in. Fill in all the space. Now this yellow is very transparent, so you can see everything up underneath it. That's fine, because we're going to lay a lot of stuff on top of it. But we just want to get that bright yellow in. Once I get the top, I'll shift back and go so I can get the bottom. And of course, if you don't want that number on there, you don't have to keep it. I'm just painting in that space. Now, when the space is filled in, I'm going to start using the white to lighten it up in the middle, in the middle in the center part. Then we'll do some shadow stuff. But just white. White is opaque, so that transparent yellow will begin to start covering. If you put the yellow in it, yellow and white together, you can get a good coverage. The white will tone down the yellow so it won't be as bright. So you can decide how much brightness you want to keep. So if you want it brighter, don't add but one smidgen of white right in the middle, in the center. If you want it to go duller, the white's going to do that. It makes it lighter, but it also makes it dull. And while that's drying, we'll paint the rest of it, and then we'll go back and do our scuffing. So the easiest way to go from one color to another is to add, we've got like a medium green. So since you already have yellow on your brush, if you'll go to the medium green and mix those two colors together, then you can get the green that you see in this center area. It's this color green. But that's the medium green added to the yellow that's already on your brush. And once again, I'm using the toe of the brush to fill in and go along the lines. So once you get that green in, the same thing's going to happen to the handle. So you're just going to fill in all that space. So we just about have the canvas covered. Black. I do want to carry this down and start making it darker. So I'm going to use a brown. So once again, I'm going to add, I've got black on my brush, so I'm going to add a little bit of red into it and begin to bring some of the brown out, even though it's really dark, but the red will make it do that. It'll make it change into a brownish color. And at about halfway down throughout that whole shape, I'm gonna make it the darker color. And I'm just laying the brush across on its side and laying it down. So once again, I'm scuffing. So the paint is a dry brush feel right across. I'm picking up some of the paint up underneath it and just moving it around. But I want it to be lighter at the bottom and keep it dark up under this area. So I just added black. You can add red, yellow if you need it to lighten it up a little bit. But go back for your brown recipe and then scuff. Actually gonna put, like, see the brownish color we have here? We're actually gonna add that medium green in it so that when we start up here, what I'd like to have happen is it look a little greener up here than it looks there. It's pretty dark there because it's not getting any light. But notice how much dark's on this side. So I'm actually gonna take this same color, add a little green to it, and then I'm gonna start scuffing over here on the side. I'm gonna dip my round brush in the water, gonna mix the brownish and green, that medium green together that's already in here, and I'm gonna start on the edge. And for me to start on that side, I have to flip over so that I can work on the edge and get a line. So in here, I'll take my brush and I'll start in with that point. I'll come up and keep shaping and shaping and shaping and shaping. I'm gonna get all the way up to the top. And then once I get that much on there, I'm gonna wash off my brush. And then I'm gonna do that scuffing thing where I take that color and mix it and bring it towards the center. So if I wash the brush and just keep moving it, I'm picking up a little bit of the paint and moving it to the center, making the orange go scuffy, dark. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. So green, a little black, or brown, or both. I'm gonna come along this side where both of them meet, right in the center. And I'm gonna still get enough of this dark that you can see it on the edge. Just picking up a little black, a little green, just barely touching the edge. Keep going up, following the line. And once I get, it's the shape, remember, go for the same shape you have on both sides. And then come, keep going up around till you get all the way to the top. And when you get to the top, you're gonna keep going. You're gonna go all the way around. Just dip your brush in the water, roll it in the paint, and keep going all the way around till you get to the rope. And the rope is in the front, so don't cover it up, leave it open. Then wash your brush. Get a lot of water on it so you can move the paint while it's still wet, and you can blend it out a little and scuff at the same time. Picked up a little bit of the blue. Look how nice that is when the blue blends in. So picked up enough of the blue. And if you go in the same direction that the buoy's going, up and down, vertical, up and down, you get that feel of it elongates it. But definitely makes the form round because you're darkening up both sides. scuffing's done on both sides, we go back to the opposite and start our highlights. So that'll be our next adventure, right through the center. I just put the white and yellow on my brush, and notice we're gonna come right down the center. We want this part to be highlighted because we want that belly of the buoy to come out so that we can see that shape. And the only way we can get the shape is to turn the corner when it turns. We want that to be lighter. So I added white. Just added a little more white to the brush, rolled the brush so I keep a point on it. And then on the hip part right here is lighter. This belly part right here is lighter. And the same thing happens as it runs through the blue. I just run the white down. Both sides, it gets a little white on the left, not the right, but on the left we have the white. It just streaks down. Dip it in the water, roll it in the paint, and let the paint streak right down that side. Now it's the opposite on the other side. We're going darker. We're going to pick up, say, blue and black or blue and green. As long as we get something that's heavy and darker, we want a little bit of that setting up a line right here that makes it look like it's been scuffed. So just a little darker color. You can see just a little bit of the line coming through. And now it just involves a lot of playing with scuffing. I'm gonna take the yellow and green and mix a little white in it. And I'm gonna scuff this in the middle. See how I'm just gonna take the middle and scuff it around? That way none of the area is flat. All of it has a variety of colors. So I want to go back up here to this little cap that's on the top and the little knot that we're going to tie. So I'm going to pick up the bright brush again so that I can get that area refined just a little bit. I'm actually going to pick up the blue with just a smidgen of the brown or grayish color in it, because I want to go right up to that top area and make sure that it looks round. And of course the only way it can look round if I put it dark on the outside edge of it. So I'm just going through like this and putting it darker right across the top. And right up underneath it where I have the darker color, see, that takes over, and so we've scuffed that out, so that looks fine. But in this area right here where we've got the knot, I took a little bit of this blue and grayish color, green or gray, right in here and put that color in that space too, so it begins to show the knot comes all the way around. It's just a little accent of a bluish green color, so it's not all brown. So that way you can see that the knot goes all around that buoy. So the little white cap area has a little bluish color. It's not fanned out too much because of where the light's coming in. but it's just a little blue on the edge. Then go in and put a little blue around the circle part where the knot's tied, and then it'll all just work together. Now, let's do a few more of streaky fun things that can add a little bit more interest and scuffing and so forth. And you can do it minimally, or you can do it as, you know, over the top as you want to, as far as how far you want to carry it. But say I take, in this particular place where I have the red right in here, what if I just take red and black and mix it together and push it a little bit darker? See, this is red and black. See how making it just a little bit darker pushes it back behind that buoy a little bit more? And all I did was put red and black, and I just scuffed it right down the area and made this side of it darker, so it pushes it behind this buoy. So now we have one in the front and one behind with one simple little brush stroke of color. Doesn't have to be refined at all. You just carry it through so you can see the red being very dark. And then once you get that dark in, we're going to do the same thing with the light right in the center. I'd like this yellow orange to show up. So continually just wash and dry your brush as you change from, you know, dark colors to light colors. But now I have orange and yellow. I'm even going to add the white into that so I can make sure that it's lighter than what I already have on here. But it's a light orange, a little yellow in it so it doesn't turn too pink. And then I'm just going to use the toe of my brush so I can literally, I'm going to put my pinky on the canvas, so literally I want my brush to make a line that goes all the way through, but a very light line, and I'm just pushing a little bit of that orange through. Just lay it down and push some of the orange so it goes all the way through the buoy. And some of these can just be as, you know, they can be as colorful and as decorative as you want. I'm going to do the same thing with just white and with yellow, just taking a little bit of the color. And this is where you just go in and play. Everybody needs a different color, everybody needs a different shape, so it's hard to say exactly what yours needs without you looking at it specifically. But I wanted some more of this color in. I want this to go a little oranger here, so I'm picking up some orange and yellow. So just sort of study your picture a little bit and see if you can figure out needs that it might have. Do you need a little bit of orange on the rope? See if I'm just barely touching a little bit of orange here. Just tapping it in to give it some color. So now it's got a little bit more orange in it. Picking up a little blue and putting the blue in here. So I'm overlapping the black just a little bit. It's just little slices of color. Putting a little bit of white with blue here. And I'll pick up white. I'll load it light with white. I'll load it on the brush, and in a couple places right here on this left-hand side where the light's coming in, I'm just going to put lines of white. That blue color I can put over here on the rope. See how I can just add blue to it? It's just a matter of playing with those colors and enjoy putting them in. Balance out one place with another. If aqua's your thing, you may add a little bit more in like this. See how I'm gonna pop the aqua and the light blue, just right in the center, just put brush strokes of that color. So they come out. A little more green here.